Okay, and I need to go publish this so that everyone can see it. Okay, so now if you refresh your modules, you should be able to see week 14. Reading from this week is going to come from chapter 8, talking about enhancing and presenting your model. We're going to skip the first part and come back to it next week. So we are going to start on page 223, where shadow settings starts. And then pretty short reading this week, just 10 pages. We'll go to page 233, where it says what are dynamic components. We're going to stop there. I've got that written here as well, 223 to 233. Quick little reading. So this week we're talking about scenes in SketchUp. On your assignment, we're creating scenes and an animation of your model. And so scenes in SketchUp are essentially just saved views of your model that you can click back and forth between, come back to. You're just kind of saving a snapshot of your model. SketchUp here. My model's not quite as far along as your all's is, but this is going to work for today. So you should have a scenes panel over here in your default tray. If you don't, go up to Window, hover over your default tray, and then make sure that scenes is checked. So you'll see it over here. So to create a new scene, we'll just kind of navigate to a view of your model that you want to save. And then you just hit the little plus sign over here in the scenes panel. So I hit that plus sign, add scene. Just gonna hit create the scene. Don't worry about styles just yet for those. All right, so whenever you create that scene, it pops up over here in your scenes panel. And then you have a few options. If you hit this details button, looks like a little arrow or the menu button. When you're clicked on this scene, you can rename the scene, you can delete the scene. You've got a few options here. So right now it's just scene 1. Maybe I'll rename this to maybe like an overall 3D. Okay, and then it'll change there. And then you'll also notice that this little tab pulled up for me at the top of my screen in the upper left. It says the name of the scene, so I just called it Overall 3D. So it also shows up as this little tab here. Bless you.
Thank you.
So let me create another scene here, just hitting that plus sign. And you'll see I hit that plus sign. Here comes a new little tab for my next scene. So you can just click back and forth. Well, I probably should have made the second scene a little bit different. Okay, so now whenever you click on these tabs, it'll just spin you around the model to that scene that we just set, that snapshot that we wanted. You can do the same thing, so you can either just simply click back and forth between these two tabs, or you can double click on the scenes over in your scenes panel, and it'll also take you to those, to that scene that you're looking for. And then same thing up here on the tabs, just like in your scenes panel, we use the details button to where we can rename, delete, have all that good stuff. You can do the same thing up here in your tabs. If you right click on one of the scene tabs, you've got those same options of renaming, deleting, adding a new scene, plus a couple extras that we'll get to. So one of these options that you'll see here is update. And so updating a scene just means that you are wanting to change certain properties about the scene. So when you, each scene saves different properties of the view. It'll change not only the camera settings, like the position and the angle and the zoom that you're at, but you can also save shadows. You can have hidden geometry turned on and off per scene. You can display different tags, have some visible and some not. You can display section planes. You have some style settings that you can change, like our edge settings, our face settings, all of that. So those things are, you can make them view or scene specific. So let's say that in my overall 3D, I can come in to my styles here, and maybe I'll just choose one of these default styles. And so now my screen has changed with that new style. If I either, if I'm clicked onto my overall 3D and I choose the details, or we know now that we can also right-click these tabs up here, and if you hit update, that will save those settings per the scene. So now if I go to my scene 2, you'll see that the style changed back to what it originally was. And then if I go back to that overall 3D, those style settings have changed. It has preserved those properties of the new style that I chose. So updating the scene, I can even just, change my vantage point here if I move around, and then I'll go ahead and update this one again. And you'll see over in your little thumbnail of your scenes panel, you'll also see a little snapshot of what that scene looks like. So now if I go back to scene 2, and then back to scene 1, that overall 3D, you'll see that it changed the camera. It remembered that I changed the camera position because I updated the scene. So just make sure that you are, if you're making a bunch of changes to your scene, you have to hit update in order to save those changes. Otherwise, let's say if I'm in my overall 3D and I change it to be over here, if I don't hit update scene, I go back to my scene 2, and then I go back to my overall 3D and I'm like, what the heck, why didn't it change my new camera position? Because I didn't hit update scene. So you have to hit update in order for those scene changes to actually save. Let's look at, and change some other things here. So I can also add some shadows in here. Let's see here, how do I turn the shadows on? I forget, there it is. Up in view, I'll go ahead and toggle my shadows on, so now I have a nice shadow being cast. If I want to save that, I need to right-click the tab or hit your details button over on the scenes panel and hit update. Go back to that, and you'll see that the shadows did indeed save. So just make sure that you're hitting that update button each time that you're creating new properties for your scene that you want to change or that you want to save. So we can also look at, so something important to note here, things that will not save per scene. You can't model something, like if I come and model a cube or something in this scene, that cube doesn't just live in this scene. That's now a modeled element that is going to be visible everywhere. So things like geometry, material changes, textures, those are not scene specific. Those are going to be the same throughout the entire model. We can, if you're wanting to show different design options, you can use scenes to do that in conjunction with tags. Like let's say that in my overall 3D view, maybe for whatever reason, I don't want my doors to show. So if I turn off the doors, see my front door has now gone away. And then I go update my scene. And you might see this little window here pop up whenever you hit update scene. It's asking you which properties you'd like to update. So, you know, if there's something that you did change that you actually don't want to update, you can uncheck this. So if I were to have updated, well, I did update the tags. Let's say that I didn't actually want that to change. I could just uncheck the tags portion and everything else would update besides the tags. So you can kind of pick and choose what pieces you want to update each time. But I'm just going to leave them all checked because I do want them all to update. So now if I hit update, I go back to my scene 2, and you'll see that my doors did come back on because in my scene 2, my doors tag is on. But if I go back to my overall 3D, that doors tag did turn back off. It is saving your tag settings per scene. So you could use those for different design options. Maybe you have option 1 on its own tag and you save that as a scene, and then you have design option 2 on a separate tag, and so you create these 2 different scenes to show different design options depending on which tag you have visible. So that would be kind of the workaround if you did want to show different materiality, different geometry per scene. You would just also need to use your tags in order to control those visibilities. And then another thing that we can play with per scene is your perspective type. So I think we've touched on perspective type just a little bit. We'll get some more practice with it today with our assignment. But if you go up to camera in your menu, you'll see there are these 3 different types of perspectives. You can do a parallel projection, which puts your model in more of a 2-dimensional style. So if I click on that, you'll see that it kind of changed so that all of the vertical lines are indeed vertical. This is especially helpful if you're in kind of like an elevation view. If I come back up here and do perspective view, you can still kind of see that depth of it. But if you're wanting a true 2-dimensional drawing, you can hit that parallel projection and it'll just show you the lines and the surfaces that you're directly on. It's not going to show you that depth. So that's one option. Perspective view, that's just your default view for SketchUp. That's probably how you've been looking at your model, just in this typical perspective. And then there's also the 2-point perspective, which gives you these 2 different vanishing points that you're looking back at. And so you'll see that, you know, the angles of all of your horizontal lines are drawing back to these 2 vanishing points. So those are your 3 types of perspectives, the 3 types of ways that you can view your model. And those are, or they can be scene specific. So if in my overall 3D view here, I want it to be a 2-point perspective, I can update my scene. Yep, I want all that to update, thank you. And then if I go back to my scene 2, maybe this one, I'll go up to camera and make the parallel projection and update that scene. So now whenever I go back to my overall 3D, it's back in that 2-point perspective mode, and in my scene 2, it's in that parallel projection mode. So you can preserve the properties of the perspective type per scene. So that's going to be important for your assignment today because you'll be asked to create elevations of your tiny house. So for that, elevation views meaning just we want to see a 2-dimensional view of each side of your tiny house. So we want the front, the back, and each of the 2 sides as an elevation view. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these scenes that I've already created. You can right-click on the tab and hit delete, or you can come over here in your scenes panel and hit that minus button, and that can also delete it. So then, if I want to create my different elevations, the first thing that you might find helpful to have is to make sure that your views tools are here on your toolbar. And so that's these little houses that you can see here at the top left of my screen. There's one, if I click on it, it just kind of takes me to an overall 3D. You can click on the top view and that'll give you kind of a plan view. You can go to the front, each of the sides, back. So those are helpful and they'll help you create your elevations. To get those, if you don't have them, we go to the View tab in your toolbars, this first button here, and just make sure that views are checked. So if I uncheck that, my little house has disappeared. If I check that, my houses came back on. So that's how you'll get those into your toolbar here. You can get to these the same way. If you don't like having the little icons on your toolbar, you can find these also under camera, standard views, and these are the same things here. So if I hit top, that takes me to that top plan view. So whichever way you prefer to navigate to them, I like having the little icons here. Helps me out. So to create an elevation, let's just walk through creating the front elevation. So the standard views are going to help you because it's going to be hard for us to get straight on. We want to make sure that we're looking directly at the elevation. So it'll be nice and easy if I can just hit the front view here of my standard views. And then you'll see that we can still see that depth, which sometimes might be okay, but what we're looking for in our assignment today is to just create a two-dimensional drawing, something that you would use more in like a construction document set of drawings. So we are going to change the perspective type to that parallel projection. And so now that took away our depth. So it looks more just like a two-dimensional drawing. We're looking head-on at it. So once I have that view set up, I can go ahead and create a scene of this. So I'll hit the plus sign on my scenes panel. I'll go ahead and rename it to be my front elevation. And so now if I move away from that, click back on this tab to my front elevation, it'll stay there with those properties that I just set for it. So that's one part of your assignment, to have 4 elevations of your tiny house. So you'll do that same process, front, sides, and back. Don't worry too much just yet on your style. You know, if you have shadows displayed or if you're showing textures or anything like that. We'll kind of get into that cleanup next week and making sure that all of your drawings are, you know, the nice, pretty way that you want to present them. This week we're really just focused on creating these scenes and getting the perspective type right. So whatever style you have this week, totally fine. We can always come back to it next week and make it nice and pretty. So that's one part. You'll have 4 elevations. Are there any questions so far? The next part of your assignment that you'll be asked to do is to create floor plans of your first floor and your second floor, as well as a longitudinal section. And so for that, we have briefly touched on the section tool before. So I have those up here in my toolbar. There are these 4 little tools here. Again, if you don't have those, you'll go to the View tab, click on Toolbars, and just make sure that section is checked, and that'll give you those 4 icons. So the first button that you have here is how you actually create a section cut. Floor plans and sections are created the same way in SketchUp. It just kind of depends on which axis you're creating that section along. So we'll walk through both. A a floor plan and a section. Let's start with the floor plan. So this first button, your section plane tool, I click on that. That brings a little section cut. We can do the same thing with this, like we did for like our rotate tool, where we use the different arrows on our keyboard to find that plane that we want it along. So for a floor plan, we're going to want it on the blue axis because we're cutting it horizontally. We're cutting that section horizontally. And then if I hit shift, it'll lock that plane in place so it's not flipping along all the different surfaces that you hover on. So to create the section, you can just click and it'll ask you to name your section. So I'll call this floor 1. Plan. Hit OK.
Do you want it like at a certain height when we're cutting it off?
Typically a floor plan is cut about 4 feet. So if you want it to be at that very certain point, I think 4 feet is a good one. You can move section planes just with the move tool. So I clicked on it and then I'm hitting M on my keyboard for move. And then you can just start to move your section cut up and down and you'll see that it's displaying different things based on how high up your section plane is. So I'm going to keep it up here for just a second. And if we want it to be at 4 feet, I'm just going to go ahead and use a guideline to find that 4 feet. So I'm hitting T on my keyboard for the tape measure tool. I'll find a line here to start creating my guideline off of, and I'll pull it up 4 feet. And now that I've got that guideline in place, I can go move my section to that point. So I click on my section plane here, use the move tool, and it'll be easier if you use a point actually in the model rather than just kind of clicking anywhere, because then it might be a little bit harder for me to find that guideline. So if I click on my wall here where the section cut is happening, and then I go find that guideline. Yeah, it's being a little bit difficult with me. Let me try this part over here. That should be easier since it'll be in line with my guideline. There we go, it snaps to that guideline once I found it there. And I just click, and now my section is at that 4 feet above the floor plane. Some of the other options that you have here with your section tools, the second button displays the section planes. So if I turn that off, then you'll see my section is still active. I'm seeing where that section is being cut, but I just no longer see that those graphic annotation for the section plane. So I turn that back on, then you can see it. This second button displays the actual section cut. So if I turn that off, now that section is no longer active. I can still see where that section is happening, but that section is just no longer active. And then this last one here, the display section fill, that just puts this dark gray color on the actual section cut. That's called poché. So if I turn that off, now you can just see all of the hollowness of your model. So just clicking that on puts a nice gray solid color over the section cut, kind of cleans it up a little bit, makes it look nicer. So all of these options here are also, you can save them per your scene. So in my front elevation here, I probably don't want all of those sections and things turned on, so I can go in here and turn off all of these different things. I don't have my section planes active, I'm not seeing where that cut is happening. And I'll go ahead and update that so I'm not seeing it. And then if I want to go back and create my floor plan scene, I'll go ahead and show my section planes again here, If you double click onto a section, that'll just automatically make it appear for you. So it'll automatically turn on this third button where you are displaying the section cuts. That's just double clicking on it. So if I'm setting up my floor plan view here, I do want my section cut to be active, so I want to see where that cut's happening. I probably want to turn on my poché so I'm not seeing all of the hollowness of my walls and such. But I don't actually want to see that annotation here showing me where that section's happening, so I'm going to turn off display section planes. And then I'll go ahead and hit the top view here so that I'm looking at it in a plan view. And just make sure that I'm on that parallel projection so that I'm not seeing any of that depth. And then I'll go ahead and create my next scene here. And I'll rename that scene to be floor plan, maybe level 1, or however you'd like to name it. Okay, so now let's make sure that all of my things have saved, they're working. I go back to my front elevation. Nice, all of my floor plan section is turning off. I click back onto my floor plan level 1. My section is reactivated so that it's showing me as that floor plan view. With me so far? Okay. So you'll do that same thing for your first floor as well as your second floor. We want to see the loft as well. And then we are also going to want to create a section. So it'll be pretty much the same thing. We'll just be looking at it kind of from a side view rather than from a top view down. I'm going to go ahead and turn my section plane back on so I can see where that one is taking place. And then I'll go ahead and turn off my section cut just so that I can see my whole model again. So now I want to create a new section, so I grab that section plane tool. I'm going to use my arrow keys to find the axis that I want. So if I'm creating a section along the long end of my tiny house here, then my red axis is going to set me up well. That is the direction that I want to cut in. So I'll hold down Shift to make sure that plane stays locked in place. And then you'll click to create that section. I'll give it a name. You can just call it a longitudinal section or however you'd like to name it. And now you'll see that I'm looking at it as a section view so that I can see what's going on inside the house. I actually don't really mind this view that I'm looking at. It's a pretty good view. I can see the loft up here, this double height space. So I'm actually pretty happy with this. But again, you can just use your move tool. You can click on it and start moving around and just kind of take a look and see what different things are going to be showing, what's displaying, depending on where you move that section cut to. But once you find the spot that you want it at, we'll just kind of go through some of those same steps here. So I do not want those section planes to show in my view. I just want it to be nice and cleaned up. I do want this section cut to be the active one. And I do want my poché or my section fill to show. And then I'll click on just the side view of my house here. I'm not sure if it's left or right. Let's just take a look. Nope, that's the wrong one. There we go. Right is going to show it to me. And it's showing really dark. I think that might just be because of the shadows and the angle that I have it at. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn off my shadows up in view. Just uncheck that shadows. Yeah, now it's looking a lot brighter. We can play around with your shadows and things next week when we kind of clean up and get ready to present each of our views. But Now I have it set to that side view, making sure up in camera I'm still in that parallel projection, so I'm not seeing any depth to my model. And this is actually helpful too. You can see here that I've got some funny stuff going on with my my wall and my roof. They're creating kind of this gap. So this can also just be helpful to get a different perspective of your model, a different view of it to see you know, where you've got some discrepancies that you can go in and fix. But this is the section view that I want to save, so I'll go ahead and create a new scene for it. Over here in my scenes panel, hit the plus sign. Created that third scene for me, so I'll right click the tab and rename it again to my longitudinal section. Now let's make sure everything's saved. Go back to my floor plan view. Click back over to my longitudinal section. And yep, that's displaying the way that I wanted it to. If something was wrong with it, let's say that you accidentally still had maybe your section planes still visible, and you don't want those to show, just make your changes, make it the way that you want, and then just update your scene. And those views will all save. Feeling okay with the section tool? Alright, now we'll move on. Okay, so the floor plans, the elevations, and this section, as well as I think an overall 3D view, those are kind of the first part of your assignment here. Yep, 3D perspective, just an overall one. Your 4 elevations, first and second floor plan, and that longitudinal section. Alright, so that's kind of part 1 of your assignment. So you're going to create scenes for each of those. So that would be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 scenes in total. And then additionally, we're going to create an animation walkthrough of the interior of our tiny house. So we can take multiple scenes and kind of put them together in this animation view. And we can just look at it here real quick to begin with. Turn off these things, I don't want them active. So I can even do it with the 3 scenes that I have saved here right now. SketchUp can create an animation of it, which basically means it just runs through those scenes for you. So the way let's just take a look at how it goes first. If you right-click on one of your tabs and hit play animation, it'll run through each of those different scenes. So it started on my front elevation, now it's moving to my floor plan, and then it's going through to my longitudinal section. And it'll just keep going around in a loop of those, just playing through each of the different scenes that you have saved. I'm going to stop that because it's making me a little dizzy. So that is basically what the animation will do. We're going to set it up so that it looks like we're walking through our tiny house, but generally that's what an animation does. It just runs through the different scenes of your model. So a couple things that we can do first to kind of make adjustments to the way your animation is viewed. You can go to, there are 2 different ways you can get to this. You can either go up to Window and Model Info, and the very first option is Animation. That's the first way we can get to this. The other way we can get to this is to right-click one of your tabs here and hit Scenes. No, I'm sorry, this is not what I meant. The other way that you can do it is going up to View, Animation, and Settings. It takes you to the exact same place. And so the settings that we do have, we don't have a ton that we can play with, but this first one is to enable scene transitions. And what that means is just you'll see the model actually transitioning to the next scene. So let's just go ahead and take a look at our animation again. If I play it, this transition that's happening where you can see the model actually moving on to the next scene. That's the transition that we're looking at. So if I go back to there, window, model info, animation, if I uncheck that enable scene transitions, and then let's take a look at what happens here if I play the animation, you'll see it's just automatically moving us through those scenes. You don't see any transition happening. It's just kind of snapping through them. So depending on the type of animation that you're looking for, you might have transitions, you might not. For what we're going to do today, being able to walk through the house, we are going to want to enable those scene transitions so that it looks like we're actually smoothly walking through the house rather than just kind of like jumping from scene to scene. So if you have those enabled, you can also modify how long those transitions take. So right now they were taking 2 seconds to go from each scene, but you can also increase that. If I made it maybe to 5 seconds, and let's go take a look. That should make it play much slower now. Nice and slow. So it just kind of depends on what you're looking for in your animation, with how slowly you'd like to move through each one. It's nice and fluid whenever it's a little bit slower, but you can play with it for however you would like it to move through your model. And then the last option that we have here is scene delay. So that is dictating how long SketchUp kind of rests on each of those scenes, how long of a pause it takes at each scene to take a look at it. Let me put this back to 2 so that it's not taking us forever. So right now it's at 1 second, so that means that SketchUp is going to pause on each scene for only 1 second, but we can bump that up. Let's make that one 5 now. And now if I go to play my animation again, it's going to sit here and pause on each scene for 5 seconds rather than 1 second. You can see we're just sitting here quite a bit longer. And I moved those transitions back to 2 seconds, so you'll see those are going a bit quicker now. So it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. Are you wanting to really emphasize each scene, or are you wanting to emphasize the transition? Yeah.
So when you're watching the shows on HGTV and the walls are popping up and everything, is this part of it or is this a different software?
It could be. Okay. I actually don't know if
I was just curious if that's a software or is it something else? Because I'm like, it's similar, but like literally things just like pop up and go down and move. And I was just curious.
It honestly might be. It does look very
Depending on the
similar.
program, I guess, that they would be using, but probably something and how they do their transitions,
Yeah, you can create your own little HGTV right here in SketchUp.
It's cool to see it really fast, but you are in a show, and so they have to do things
Cram like
fast.
6 months into like 30
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
I do know though, I've seen those, like sometimes they're individual, like, oh, we're gonna put, I don't know, a bed or something here, so it's not as much about a seat, and that individual item pops up.
And they'll like start like the fourth time they have it and they'll like take down the walls and then they pop everything else up. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, I've actually never really thought about that, but maybe. Okay, one more thing that we can kind of play with for our animation. You'll see that it went through every tab that I have up here. You can tell it to skip over certain scenes. So let's say in my animation, I actually don't want my floor plan to go through. I just want it to go from my front elevation to my longitudinal section and back again. So I want to skip over that floor plan. We can do that over here in our scenes panel. Let's see here, there we go. So if you click on this little black and white button here, it kind of pulls up a secondary panel down here with some more options. And the very first thing says include in animation. So if that's checked, then that scene is going to be included in your animation. But if I uncheck it, so we'll just go ahead and uncheck it here. And you'll also see that in your scenes panel, as well as up here in your tabs, we've got some parentheses over it now, so that just kind of lets you quickly be able to see that one's going to be skipped in your animation. So now if I go to play my animation, I click on my tab and hit play animation. It should now skip that floor plan. I forgot to have it on 5 seconds to rest. Yep, skip the floor plan and immediately went to the longitudinal section. So it'll just keep going back and forth between the front elevation and the section at this point. So that'll be helpful because we are going to create certain scenes here that we do want to include in our animation, but we're not going to want our elevations, our floor plans, our sections, all that in our animation view. So just make sure that you are only including the ones that you do want to show in your animation. I'll go ahead and turn that on. Okay, other questions so far? Okay, so let's look at how we're actually going to set up our walkthrough here. Turn all those off. So if I look back at your Canvas assignment here, also in your Canvas assignment, I kind of outlined some of the things that I've been talking about here. So this should kind of be a nice refresher as you're going to do your assignment later. I've also linked some videos from that SketchUp Essentials guy. He's got some really good videos. If you're getting stuck, he can also help you with these videos. So those are just additional resources. But for your animation walkthrough of the interior of your tiny house, everyone's going to start from the living room, and then you can either choose to walk back through your kitchen, you could go into the first floor bedroom, or you could go upstairs to the loft. So I don't really care where you go. We're just all going to start in the living room. So let me turn some things off here so we can take a look. Oh, I'm right here. Let me turn off my exterior walls. And just so we can see. Okay, so we're all going to start kind of in the front living room area. And then you can choose to walk just kind of back, looking at your kitchen. Or you can choose to go into this bedroom in here. Or if you'd like to, you can walk up the stairs and come to your loft up here. So whichever way you'd like to choose. Just to make it simple, I'll probably just walk back through the kitchen to show you all, but please feel free to walk anywhere within your tiny house. Let me turn this one back on. Okay, so we're gonna learn a few more tools so that we can kind of refine our view as we're walking through the tiny house.
Are you recording?
Yes. Okay, have a good night. Okay, so it can be a little bit difficult to get into your tiny house. You can't really see in there, so it's kind of hard to make your way in there. So the tools that we're going to use are going to be more helpful than just your standard orbit tool. Because the orbit tool is kind of clunky sometimes. You're moving all around the model. How do I get into these tight spaces? So some of the tools that we're looking at here, let's just do kind of a quick overview. These are your camera tools. So I have them over here on the left side of my screen, all of these magnifying glass looking things. So if you want to get those on your toolbar, go up to view and toolbars. And actually mine are part of the large tool set, so if you have your large tool set turned on, they'll already be there. But if you don't have that large tool set, I believe they are the camera tools. Yep. So if you check the camera, all of these tools will show up for you. So whatever you prefer, just having camera, or if you've got your large tool set, they should be in there as well. Okay, so we're looking at these here. First one, Orbit. We all know Orbit pretty well. You can either click on the Orbit tool and just use your left mouse clicker to move around, or we know that you can press and hold the scroll wheel and just use that as kind of your shortcut to orbit the camera around your model. That one shouldn't be new to us. The next one here is Pan. So again, you can either click on it here and just use your left mouse button. This kind of moves you side to side or up and down. It just kind of lets you pan around your model here. Shortcut for that one. If you've got your scroll wheel pressed down to activate the orbit, and then you would just also hold down Shift, and that gives you the pan tool as well. The next one we have is just the zoom tool. So if you click on that magnifying glass, or the hotkey is Z, you can use this guy to just zoom in and out through your model. So I'm pressing and holding my left mouse key here, going forward to go inward, pulling it back to zoom out. You can also, with the zoom tool, if you hold down Shift, that starts to change your field of view. It's a little bit difficult in the view that I'm set up in right now. Let's see if I can get into my tiny house here. Show us a little bit better. Might have to drop myself in. Look at this. Hopefully you can see the difference between zoom. That looks pretty similar. But a lot of times field of view might start to kind of distort what you're looking at. So field of view is supposed to just kind of like widen your peripherals so you can see more outside of your window. So you can do that by holding down the Shift key, but just be aware that sometimes that will kind of start to distort what you're looking at. Of course, I'm not getting a very great example of that here. The next one, zoom window. If you use that one, you can drag a selection window across a certain thing, and then it just kind of like zooms you in to that window. That becomes your screen. So you can use that way to zoom. That one has a hotkey of Control plus Shift plus W. I don't really know that that's any easier than just going and clicking on the icon, so I don't really use that hotkey, but that's SketchUp's default hotkey there. And then Zoom Extents, the one with the little arrows on it. If you click on that, that just kind of takes you back to an overall view. Like if you get lost in your model, you just zoomed in too far and you're like, oh my gosh, where am I? How do I get out of here? Just click on that Zoom Extents and it'll take you back out to an overall view. And then this other one here with the magnifying glass, that's just a previous button. So you can hit that and it'll take you back to whatever view you were previously on. So my previous view was whenever I got lost in the white space. So if I hit previous, that's where it takes me to. Zoom Extents again to get active. And then we have our walkthrough tools. So those are going to be a little bit more helpful in letting us navigate through the model. So those are the ones right down here underneath our camera tools. This first one is the position camera tool. I'm going to turn my roof back off so that I can get my camera in here. So let's say I want to start at the front door, get myself dropped in there. With the position camera tool, it looks like a little person standing on an X. With this, you can specify the location that you're standing in, as well as what eye level you're looking at, and the direction that you're looking towards. So the first thing you could do, you could just simply click and drop your little guide here. So if I click once, oh, that got to a weird view. Well, that guy's supposed to just kind of drop you in there. But if you click and then drag to a certain direction, that dragging, so the first initial click places your camera, and then the dragging puts the way that you're looking. So if I drag and then I release, it's getting really weird with the camera here. Oh, let's get back to perspective, maybe that'll help me. And then perspective view. I'm trying to place that guy again. Click to place, drag to point in a certain direction. There we go, now I'm in there. But you can see I'm on the floor. And so your measurement box, that now turns into an eye height. It might be hard for you to see on my screen, but in the lower corner here, it says 1 foot, and so that's why I'm only at 1 foot above the ground plane. You can type in a new eye height, so I'm going to type in 5'6", enter, and that automatically rose my eye height so that I'm now looking like an actual person. Okay. So you can always change that eye height. You don't need to click into this box or anything. Just if you're on that position camera tool or one of these view tools, just type in a new height. I could even type in 7 foot, enter, and that raises me up to now looking at 7 feet. Maybe I'm a really tall person. Okay, and so then once I placed that camera, you might have noticed that my cursor here automatically changed to the look around tool, so now my cursor looks like a little eyeball. So that just automatically happens once you place a camera. The look around tool just basically pivots the camera view around your stationary point. So I'm going to stay in place, but if I start dragging my cursor around, I'm clicking and dragging, I'm staying in one place, and it's basically like I'm just kind of turning 360 in place. Either turning my head or maybe I'm moving my body around in one point, but I can basically just look around in different ways, and I can look up and down and all that good stuff. So that's the look around tool. But do note with the look around, if I am now in here and I start orbiting or panning around, my eye height is not going to stay consistent. So now if I go back to that look around tool, my eye height is now at 6'3" 5/8". You can always just change it back. Type in 5'6" again, enter, and it'll take me back to where I was. So just be aware that if you have your eye height set and then you start moving yourself around with the pan tool or whatever, that eye height will probably change. But you can always get yourself back to it. You just need to be in this look around mode to change that eye height. And then the other one that we have here, the walk tool, these little footprints here. I actually just noticed this field of view one. I think this is new for 2023. So I guess the field of view has its own tool now. The zoom tool, you can still do shift to change that field of view, but it looks like field of view has its very own tool now as well, this little angle guide. But now that we're dropped into the model, you'll be able to see field of view a bit better. So if I'm just zooming, I'm just kind of zooming in and out, and now I'm lost because I zoomed out too far. I'm going to hit my previous button to get me back to where I was. That previous button's nice and helpful. The field of view is basically like you're still standing in the same spot, but if I start to zoom away you know, it's starting to distort your vision here. You're changing your perspective here. So field of view is kind of wonky. Sometimes it's helpful if you're trying to get a lot into one view, but you know, that it's some very obvious distortion going on here. So I don't play around with that too much. But the one that I was going to show you, the walk tool, this just basically kind of lets you walk around through your model. So you just click and drag, and that'll start kind of walking you through the model here. So I still have my mouse tool pressed down, my left mouse, and then once I release, then I'll stop. But you just click and drag the cursor to walk around in that specific direction. Use my little eyeball here to flip myself back around. With the walk, just kind of move it around here. The living room, all that good stuff. This tool features collision detection, so it actually won't let you walk through walls or through doors, and it can register whenever you're walking up some stairs. So let's see if I can get myself in a good spot over here. Like if I try to walk through here right now, it's just not letting me walk. It's all jumbled and distorted because it's saying, hey, there's something here, you can't walk through that. Hit my previous button. Alright, so then I want to show you walking up the stairs here. Get myself in a good position. Walking up the stairs. Get myself further into the corner. Okay, if I want to walk up these stairs, the walk tool should allow me to do that. I just start dragging in the direction of my stairs, boom, boom, boom. It's kind of hectic there, but I did walk up the stairs. Now I'm on the second level. That's pretty nifty. You can turn off collision detection. You know, if you just want to walk around freely and not worry about bumping into walls and stuff, with that walk tool, if you hold down the Alt key, that'll disable collision detection. So now if I get back to where I was. Okay, now I'm at the bottom of the stairs. Oh. Okay, you didn't see that. If I hold down that Alt key while I'm walking, then that collision detection goes away, and now I can just start walking straight through things, and now I'm outside of my model. So that's holding down the Alt key with the walk tool. You can walk through things. But just normally, if you're not holding down anything, you won't be able to walk through anything. Also with the walk tool here, just a couple more things. Whenever you start to click and drag, it might be hard to see on my screen, but there are these little crosshairs that show up where you initially clicked. If you, those crosshairs will stay in place. If you keep your footprint here, your cursor really close to those crosshairs, you see how slow I'm moving? I'm walking really slow. The further away I move from those crosshairs, the faster I'll start to walk. So if you're just kind of creeping through, wanting to look at stuff, then keep your cursor really close to where you initially clicked near those crosshairs. Otherwise, you can just kind of run through and zoom. You can also run by holding down Control. That'll also allow you to run through the model. So then you don't have to worry about how close you are to the crosshairs or anything like that. If you just hold down Control, then you're just going to zoom through that model. I hit the front door. questions so far? Okay, so then to set up your animation, your walkthrough here, the first thing you're going to want to do is position your camera to where you want to start. Let me get us back to our 3D here. We'll just walk through that again to set up our first scene. So I think we'll all probably start around the front door here. So I'll grab my position camera tool, click and drag to place that camera, and then whichever direction you'd like to start facing, and then release to let it take you there. Take my eye height back to 5'6". And this might be your starting view. This might be where you start. So once you get yourself set up here, turn my roof back on so that you can't see that gap. Once I get myself set up where I want to be, then I'll go ahead and create a new scene. And I'm gonna rename it. So you'll see now we hit that black and white to set up this kind of secondary panel down here. Now it gives me the option to just go ahead and name it right in here. So that was this black and white thing. If I click on that, then I can see all these properties. So I'm gonna go ahead and name this, I don't know, maybe this is my front door. And I do want it to be included in the animation here. So the next thing I'll do to start walking through is start choosing more places along your route. So I just walked forward a little bit. Maybe I'll create a new scene here. The thing is, we want to make sure that we're creating enough scenes so that our transition is nice and smooth. If I just created my starting point and my ending point, let's say that I am going to go ahead and have my next, or I want to make my way up to the second floor. If I just created a scene at my front door, and then I just created a scene at my second floor, let me plop myself in there. And you will notice I'm on the second floor here, but my eye height is at 10 feet. So the eye height is from the ground plane. SketchUp doesn't realize that you have a second floor, so it's not going to start over at 0 at the second floor. So your eye height will have to be starting from 0, from the ground plane. So our second floor is at 10 feet, so then if I want 5'6" above the second floor, I would need to put 15'6". Okay, so maybe this is my final view that I'm looking for, and I went ahead and created a scene of this, and I'm going to name that loft view maybe. And then I'm also going to go ahead and for all my elevations, my floor plans, and section, I'm going to uncheck include in animation so that those don't get included as I am doing my walkthrough. So this way I'm only going from the front door to my loft view. If I try to just create my animation from here, I hit play, I'm not going to have a smooth walkthrough from the front door to the loft, and you'll see it swinging all around. SketchUp just takes the shortest distance possible to get from one scene to the next. So we have to set up multiple scenes along the way so that SketchUp actually transitions us as though we are walking through the space. So we're going to have to set up, it might be just a few scenes, or it might be several scenes, just depending on how far you're trying to get. But you're going to have to set up scenes along the way so that SketchUp can kind of take the path that you're wanting so that it looks like or smoothly walking through the model rather than just flying all around to these different points. Does that make sense? So if I were to kind of keep on going with my path, now that I've got my starting point and my ending point, I just need to set a couple more scenes along the way so that SketchUp takes that path. So let's just go ahead and create another one, maybe here at the base of the stairs, and look up towards it. So maybe I create this one as another scene. Call it base of stairs. And side note here, you'll see that I have front door, loft view, and base of stairs. Those aren't in the order that I want them to be. Ideally, we'll go from front door to base of stairs to loft view. But whenever SketchUp plays the animation, it plays them in the order that the tabs are, or that the scenes are listed. So to change that, if you want to reorder your scenes, just click on one of your scenes here in your scenes panel, and then you can use these up and down arrows to move it. So I'm going to move it up, and now my scenes are in the correct order, and you'll notice that the tabs also updated here. So now I go from front door to base of stairs to loft view. So that's more of the order that I want it in. Now if I go ahead and play my animation, and actually I'm going to speed it up so that we're not sitting there staring at each scene for 5 seconds. Put this back to 2. Now if I go play my animation, it's still not quite the smooth transition that I want, but you can see that I got a little bit closer that time by adding that scene in the middle, having SketchUp go from the front door to the base of stairs to the loft. So it might take you several scenes getting set up to make SketchUp realize that you're wanting it to go kind of in that smooth path. So long story short, we want it to look like we're walking through the house, not just flying around to different points. Okay, and then the last thing, in your submission, you're actually going to have 2 submissions for today's assignment. So I want you to save your SketchUp model just as usual and upload the SketchUp file to our assignment. But then I also want you to export your animation as a video file and upload that to the assignment as well. So we can take our animation and we can just kind of turn it into a movie file so that we can just kind of share it around with others. And I'm not super sure whenever you go to upload, I don't know if it lets you upload 2 things at once. So if it doesn't, then just, make multiple attempts at the submission. So upload your SketchUp file, submit that, and then create a second attempt and upload your video file. Or maybe you can just add the video file in the comments section of your submission. Hopefully one of those 2 methods works, but please let me know if it's not working and you aren't able to upload 2 things. So the way that we will create this animation video file, once you have your animation set up, ready to go the way that you want it, really easy, we'll go up to File and Export. And then we'll choose Animation, the last option here on that, and then just choose wherever you want to save it to, and it should be saving as this video file type. So let's just go ahead, I'll save it here, export. If you have a lot of scenes, it might take a little while to export it. You can see here I've only got 3 scenes that I'm exporting in my animation, but it still took 10-15 seconds to export. let's go check it out. And here's my animation, just in a little movie file. So now you can share it with your friends. Let them see the cool things that you're making in Intro SketchUp. So I just want you to upload that little video file as well.